Welcome to the Kitcar History File series, where we'll be going through the industry's past. We'll be visiting old marks of long ago, some modern ones, some mostly older stuff. A lot of archive information with photographs and information on the cars they made, the people involved, and what happened to them. Hi, my name's Steve Holt, editor of TKC Mag and totalkitcar.com, and welcome to the Total Kitcar YouTube channel and another episode in our Total Kitcar History File series. Welcome back, although if you're new around here, equally a warm welcome to you too. In case this has just turned up in your feed in a very sort of random manner, before you hit the escape button, we cover the very best, and perhaps worst one would say, of the UK kit car industry's 75 years of existence. And indeed, 2024 marks the 75th anniversary of a lovely chap, wonderful character called Derek Buckler, first starting to sell his or replica chassis kits of his very successful post-war sprint and hill climb car. It was in 1949. I don't think Derek would probably have envisaged being described as the father of the kit car industry, but yet he kind of invented the term, and yes, he is definitely the father of the kit car industry in the UK. So always like to pay a tribute to Derek for that very reason, really. Anyway, this is a little bonus episode for you. Back in the day, if we were sticking bits on our cars and making them what we thought was much more attractive, we would have had a choice, a massive choice of companies, such as Leston being an obvious one, Speedwell, Radbourne Racing, all sorts of companies all over the country. Some became household names like VW Derrington. The list goes on and on. Alexander Engineering. The names just flow, just keep flowing. And one of the most successful, I guess, was Cosmic Wheels and Accessories, or Cosmic Car Accessories, I think initially. And it's funny because whenever I used to hear, and still do, if I look into some of these old playback TV stations, and I watch an episode of Only Fools and Horses, and Rodney Trotter coming out with iconic or ironic in his terms cosmic remark, it always reminds me of my dad's old Ford Cortina Mark III GT in sunflower yellow that he used to swan around like the King of South Norwood in. And it had, of course, he had a Cosmic Mark II two-spoke steering wheel. And I think he then also bought himself a set of 13-inch Cosmic RW wheels to nail onto it as well. And I think he had to save up for that. But Cosmic was quite we'll sort of come to their history, but they were quite unusual, or set the sort of scene really for, I suppose, 10 bob catalogue wheels is what they were called, because you could buy them out of I don't think it was a Little Woods catalogue type thing, but it was certainly a catalogue, and you could pay weekly, and that's what my father did for his Cosmic RW wheels. I think I remember reading that was quite good. He obviously thought he was the man about town in those days because he had his sunflower yellow Cortina. When he went out on a Friday night, he'd splash I think he bathed in the very potent Old Spice aftershave that he splashed all over, and he put his Hush Puppy slip-ons on in Weimaraner brown. He was the man. To be honest though, those wheels, like they did his car, they gave hundreds, thousands of cars in the UK a real visual lift. And that steering wheel he had was pretty good because it was one of the, I suppose, pretty familiar now, Motor Liters range of brilliant wheels, but the Cosmic one was a very distinctive two-spoker, which really looked quite good. The Cosmic were at the affordable end of the market. I sort of hesitate to call it automotive bling market, but I guess they were. Techdel, who produced a mini light wheel, and Wolfer Race as they were called, dominated the market in the early years of aftermarket wheels, before plenty of others jumped on the bandwagon and all sorts of... And then later, of course, car makers themselves began offering alloy wheels as optional extras on their new cars. I alluded earlier to Cosmic being referred to as catalogue wheels, particularly without Mark II. They were listed in those catalogues that I mentioned, and you could pay 30 bob a week. Well, sorry, for younger readers or younger listeners and overseas listeners, 30 bob is the equivalent. Well, it was the equivalent of £1.50. The average guy who earned average wages the chance to get the wheels of their dreams, really. Like lots of things back then, I think they were regarded as kitsch now, but they did seem really cool at the time. And indeed, Cosmic wheels in particular are very sought after these days. Mentioned a Ford Cortina, but how many minis are running around, or were classic minis were running around on Cosmic wheels, for goodness sake. It's an interesting story, Cosmic Car Accessories. They were founded by a chap called Ken Rose, who began his working life as an apprentice at Lee Francis in Coventry, where his father Hugh was a member of the senior management. I think indeed he was technical director there at Lee Francis. When he was called up in 1942, he joined RAF Fighter Command, and he flew Spitfires and Hurricanes during his service in the war. Demobbed in 1946. I think he went back to the world of engineering, but I know not with whom and what he did. But he had a significant career move in 1952, when I think he was encouraged by friends and family to create his own business, especially after he bought a very tired standard Vanguard, which wasn't unusual for the time. It didn't have a heater. I think we were built much tougher in those days, because I can't imagine going out in a car with no heater nowadays. Crikey. It's bad enough if I still find and still get to drive old Lotus 7s nowadays that have no heaters, which, oh my goodness me, I must be a big softie, because it is brutal. I do like the latest Caterham 7s and other makes, of course, who not only have heaters, but they have seat heaters, no doubt, no less. And that's a luxury, and I guess what we expect these days, really. The name Cosmic, I mentioned the sort of comedic aspect to the name that I sort of foresee these days, but it was actually, there's all sorts of conjecture as to where it came from. It's quite simple, really. Someone once told Ken that Cosmic rays were the sun's hottest. He liked it and he used it. But his first product was to remedy his the freezing cold standard Vanguard, and he came up with a heater, which he then sold commercially under the Cosmic name, and indeed Cosmic as a brand was born with that. And he had a really good philosophy. He didn't just want to come up with the ideas for products or indeed have them made elsewhere. He wanted to design and manufacture in-house the stuff that he wanted to sell. And I think he even had a foundry in his factory in Mount Street in Walsall, which I think grew exponentially over the years as the company grew. It wasn't long before all sorts of go-faster parts were appearing in the fledgling Cosmic Car Accessories brochure. Obvious things like wheel nuts, wheel spacers, steering wheels that I mentioned, string back driving gloves, gear knobs, seal kit plates, and even very random stuff like little coat hooks that you could put in the car began appearing. The market, as I said earlier, was incredibly became incredibly flooded very quickly. But I was speaking to a very fine gentleman called Lincoln Small, who was a co-director of Radbourne Racing just a couple of weeks ago, and I was asking him about that, and he was saying that Radbourne introduced wheels, had wheels made for them, and all sorts of other accessories. and it didn't matter how many companies were selling them in the 60s. There was room for everyone, and indeed success to be had for everyone who did try that. So it might have been a flooded market, but it didn't affect sales, which is a kind of sign of the times, really. I've got a copy of a mid-60s Cosmic in a class of their own strapline catalogue. It's a delightful, charming thing, packed full of stuff that really would have tempted the Jack the Lad motorists of the 60s, like my dad. The first aluminium road wheel, naturally enough called the Mark I, was launched in 1961, and they literally did fly out the door. I hesitated to use the pun rolled out the door because that would have been a bit obvious. They really did, as I said, sold well. They were already gaining a good reputation for the quality of their already established parts. And motorists at that time were hungry for any instant lift that their often old cars could get. And the alloy wheel, aftermarket alloy wheel, was the instant fix, really, if you could afford it. And of course, with Cosmic, you could, because you could go to someone in your neighbourhood who was an agent for a particular catalogue, and you could order yourself up a set of wheels. Mark II Cosmic came out in 1964, and if anything, it was probably more popular than the Mark I. They were cast. Ken cast them in his own foundry in the factory in Walsall, and aluminium was heated to something like 825 degrees C, and molten aluminium was poured into the moulds. I do remember as a kid, I remember reading a feature in a car magazine of the day, and I can't remember which one, sadly, and there's a picture of Ken standing proudly beside who I guess was his works manager, accompanied by literally a wall of brand new, freshly cast Cosmic wheels of various designs. What an impressive picture, actually. As everybody else did in those days, if you were a company servicing that market, you would take a stand at that year's motor show, and indeed in January the racing car show, be it at the Horticultural Halls in Westminster or Olympia, just a bit further west in London. And that's where these companies such as Cosmic would display their new products for the year, new additions to their catalogue, to a very eager and receptive audience. They probably reached their peak in 1971, but that was when the UK market really did change. Really, the recession that followed, one of the regular recessions we've had, but a particularly brutal recession, and the 3-day week of 1973 straightened out a few companies in terms of put straighteners on them in terms of cash flow and such like, and alarm bells started to ring, and lots of companies like Cosmic sadly went into decline after that. VAT came along in 1973 too, and I think that put paid to quite a few kitcar companies, and certainly stopped Lotus, TVR, Gilburn, etc., from offering their cars in kit form. So it had its own effect on the aftermarket, naturally enough. And of course, it wasn't long before car manufacturers too worked out that, well, why should the aftermarket be supplying wheels for our cars when we could produce them ourselves? And that's what they did. Initially, alloy wheels and more sort of interior luxuries were options, quite often expensive options. But when they became available and affordable for the average guy, the average motorist, it inevitably affected the aftermarket. Some of those manufacturers, naturally enough, bought from some of the established aftermarket companies, but most had the ability to get the very best price elsewhere from a local foundry who could produce whatever they wanted in the vast numbers that they needed. And of course they could get the prices that they wanted by making them in quantity. So that really hit the aftermarket. Company Cosmic carried on until they soldiered on until 1986, and Ken sold it on. They continued to slide, sadly, and eventually they went bust in year 2000, which was a sad end, really, for a very notable 60s, or a company that originated in the 60s, and what was a household name at the time, for its time, among young car enthusiasts during the 60s in particular. A quick word on Ken's father, Hugh. He too had been an apprentice, but he'd been at Humber in Coventry, where he met French engineer Louis, here comes my pronunciation, lack of skills, Louis Cotalon, Coatalen, who'd started his career in his homeland, working for the likes of Panhard, Elevasieux, and Didion Bouton before he moved to England, where he joined Humber as chief engineer in 1901, forgive me, which of course is when he met Hugh. Cotalon became MD of Sunbeam in 1909 after he was headhunted, and his first task, I think, was to, and I've seen this written, and I'm not sure if it's effectively true, but I've seen it written that he basically was tasked with copying Peugeot's very advanced Grand Prix winning engine of the day with a twin double overhead cam arrangement, 4 valves per cylinder and 2 twin spark plugs. Twin spark plugs, I beg your pardon. It was said to be so advanced that Peugeot's test driver, Paolo Resta, was charged with taking it around Peugeot dealers in the UK. The story goes, and I so hope this is correct and not a myth, that one night Resta left the car parked in a side street in Wolverhampton, and it's alleged that some technicians from another manufacturer, a Coventry-based manufacturer, hot-wired it, took it back to their workshop overnight, removed the engine, studied its construction, took copious notes, reinstalled it, and returned it to its hitherto parking spot in Wolverhampton before first light, totally to the ignorance of Resta. He had no idea, and he carried on with his tour, totally unaware of what had happened or what was alleged to have happened. And as I said, I'd so want that story to be true. And surprise, surprise, it wasn't long before Sunbeam had their very own similar style engine that was tearing up its own trees. Isn't that a lovely story? But anyway, there it is, short and sweet, a little history of Cosmic. We've put a few photos of some of their some of their known products and some of their lesser known products here with this one. It's a little bonus episode, this one, so I hope you enjoy it. And indeed, as I write this, we're closing in rapidly on 1,000 subscribers for the Total KitCar YouTube channel. That means an incredible lot to me. When I started it, I just thought if I got 10 subscribers, I would have been happy. To think that I've nearly hit the milestone of 1,000 is incredible, really. And I can't thank you enough if you are one of those subscribers. Although I was reading some stats the other day, having pointed out to me, so I could understand them, that 79% of the viewers on this channel don't actually subscribe. So I think we should encourage us to do better than that, really. So just to say again, and I'm sorry if you are regular sufferers of hearing this, but if you could subscribe, it's free of charge. It'll help the channel out, I'm told, and it'll certainly make my day. And wherever you are in the world, I thank you for giving up a part of your day to come and listen to this little channel. Wherever you are in the world, whatever you're doing, whatever time of day it is, I really, really wish you a fabulous time, a fabulous day. Thanks again for visiting. I'll turn the lights out on the way out. If you could just stop briefly to hit the like button, that would greatly please me too. And again, I would be greatly appreciative. Really look forward to welcoming you again to the next episode of our little intrepid little series. And thanks again. Thanks for visiting. See you next time.